Craig Conover. Welcome to Biscuits and Jam.
Thanks for having me, Sid.
Where am I reaching you right now?
I am currently in Charleston, South Carolina, which is my home base. I split time between here in New York City, where my girlfriend lives, though. But this has been my home base since 2006. I moved here.
And what part of town are you in?
So I'm in Mount Pleasant, actually. I lived downtown Charleston for all of undergrad and then all of law school, and a couple years after. But what I have found in Charleston is when you're ready to grow up, it takes moving over the bridge. And so that's the sign that you're ready for the next chapter in your life. So I'm between the beach and downtown.
I can relate to that. Well, I lived in Charleston for a while. We left in 2011.
Okay.
So it has been a minute, but we lived over on Sullivan's Island. And
Nice.
it was something really nice about crossing that bridge, every day.
Yeah, it's I'm right on the other side of the Isle Palms connector, and it's just we have some nice drives here. You can just get in your car and drive and really zone out, and it's like our
It's
main.
not a bad commute. Yeah.
No. It's pretty neat. So it's growing. I'm sure when you were just back here for the design house, you saw that. It seems to us like every month there's new stuff. So I think if you haven't been here in a couple, years, I can't imagine what it looks like.
Yeah, there's some traffic. That's what comes with growing up, I guess, as a city. So, Craig, speaking of growing up, you grew up in Delaware.
Yes.
Which is technically in the South. And I'm wondering, did it feel like the South to you?
Well, is it though? Because we are north of the Mason-Dixon. We're like right on it.
Well, I guess maybe part of it is south of the Mason-Dixon. But we've claimed it. We claim Delaware. But I'm wondering if does it feel, Southern in any way, or did it feel that way, where you were growing up?
Yeah, I grew up, it was very country, I think. They called it Lower Slower Delaware. So Delaware has 3 counties. The northern county, Wilmington, is like the corporate city. That's where everyone's business offices are. And then the middle is the Air Force Base, Dover, and some other stuff. And then we have cornfields and chicken farms and the beach. And so it was a good variety of different kind of livelihoods or cultures. I was friends with country people and friends. I was friends with a lot of different groups. And then in the summer, it became a tourist town. We're right under Rehoboth Beach, right near Bethany Beach and Ocean City, Maryland, which a lot of people are familiar with. So my move to Charleston actually felt more like a move to like the city, I guess, than it would be for some. Like to me, it felt like I was going in the opposite direction than like I was getting less country by going to South Carolina somehow.
Interesting. Yeah.
Honestly, we had, when I was in high school, people would go deer hunting before school. And like, if you looked in our parking lot, you would see, some people's, like their kills from that morning. Like they had to make a rule that they had to address the fact that people had hunting rifles in their trucks at school when I was in high school.
So super rural.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was. And it was cool. Like I really enjoy going back. We still have my favorite grocery store is called Hawker's, and it's owned by a local family. And if you go in during the fall, it's a lot of talk about turkey hunting, and it's a nice place to go home to. It's kind of neat to be around all the country stuff.
So tell me a little bit about the house and the neighborhood where you grew up. Was that sort of rural feeling, or were you in more of a town?
No, we called them like communities, but they were really just developments, I guess. And so it hadn't really grown into a beach town as much as it is now. I mean, it's still very country. But even inland homes, they say, like, are at the beach, even though they're 20 minutes away now. The property has really, you've seen a lot of the farms developed, and it's interesting to see. But I grew up, our first home was a rancher inland, and we lived on a cul-de-sac, and I got to build a tree house in the backyard. We were on some woods, and my friend's grandmother had strawberry, a field of strawberries like down the street. And so we really enjoyed cul-de-sac living. And then my father had started a cleaning company and a water mitigation company that turned into a construction company when I was little. So my mom was a school teacher, but my dad owned his own business. And why that was a kind of neat to experience was, as my childhood went on, my dad's business grew. And so I lived in a couple different homes, but we were always kind of moving into a bigger place. Like, they were modest, but I got to experience a lot. We got to build a house that my mom said she would, never move from. And then we got to build next door. And I got to be around some, like, I guess I got to see my parents living out some of their dreams, and I didn't really realize it yet, because you don't know as a little kid.
Right. That's a beautiful thing, though. And to look back and think about it that way, that they were kind of growing and moving on, and realizing some of their dreams. That's great.
Yeah, when the house was being built, the first one, we rented a haunted, like a home built in the 1800s across from a cemetery. And we had like giant tom turkeys that would, come out and peck your car in the morning. But my little brother and I got to dig through the woods and find all these like antiques and stuff. I mean, looking back, it was it was good for the imagination. I guess, we weren't really allowed to, I don't even think we had video games till later on, but if I was only allowed to play them on weekends. So, after school was still getting your hands dirty, and eventually got into gardening, which came later, but that was really cool too. But that came from, playing outside and discovering different plants and all this stuff.
Yeah, definitely not, looking at a phone all the time.
No, it was, we got around with our bicycles. And I think that's something that I think about now, is that, I love Charleston, but I also attribute a lot of where I am in life to the childhood I had, which, was spent in the woods or on four-wheelers, or, it was just different than where I live now. And so it'll be interesting to see if I can one day replicate as best as I can the childhood that I had. Because, with technology and stuff now, like, and then you work really hard too to provide, for things. And it's, I'm sure it's a delicate balance for parents.
Yeah, it's hard as a father of two kids who grew up in the phone era. It's hard to do, and it is a battle to keep them away from some of that, and to keep them away from the right amount of it, and to do it in the right way. It's a delicate dance.
There's no guidebook, it's
so, no.
brand new.
Craig, I want to ask about food for a minute. Who was the cook in your family?
So it became me.
Really?
Yeah. So my mom was our cook when we were growing up. And she, like I said, she was a school teacher. And she didn't grow up cooking. And so, she would come home from a long day at school with elementary school kids. And then again, another thing I was fortunate to have that I didn't know till later on, like, we had dinner as a family every night. So, that's something I didn't know wasn't a thing until I got older. And so we tease her now, and we're very appreciative of everything that she did. But we have gotten to a place now where we really laugh looking back. We had just a couple things that she knew how to make, whether it was spaghetti or TV dinners. Pot roast in the crock pot was a delicacy for us, or beef stroganoff.
There wasn't a
And
lot in the rotation.
no, there wasn't. And, around sixth or seventh grade, I started to become enamored with the cooking channel. And I would come home after practice and I would watch Good Eats by Alton Brown and Emeril Lagasse's show. And I just loved the science behind it. And so fortunately, I was allowed to cook whatever I wanted as long as it meant my mom didn't have to cook. And so I became cooking more and more. And then I was able to teach my mom. And now she's a great cook. And so she learned later in life. But that was, I leave a extremely messy kitchen. But I did like a little cookbook in seventh grade with, Polaroid pictures and stuff because we took it
Really?
in. Yeah, because and my parents still have it, which is great. So the goal is to one day do a cookbook and then have some of the, the old recipes in there. But yeah,
Can you remember a recipe that's in there?
The first thing I made was a key lime pie from scratch, which is what my dad loves to talk about. So that was the first thing that I plated and took pictures of and zested the lime around the plate. And I just thought it was, so cool. And then, you went into like bacon wrapped scallops or whatever it was. But the grill is where I found success early on. Yeah, so it was fun to cook as a young. That was kind of my first step into the hobbies and kind of personality I have now was cooking.
So, and it explains a lot of your interest in restaurants. I mean, you've got a restaurant in New York, and you're about to open one in Charleston called By the Way. Are there aspects of your kind of cooking interests that have found their way into the restaurants?
I think I think it's helped facilitate the relationships that got me there. And so one of my very close friends, Jordan Andino, is an incredible Filipino chef in New York City. And he and I have I think our friendship grew on that passion for food. And so he would take me around New York City and he knew all these like different chefs. And I think he saw my appreciation for it. And so during COVID, he had always kind of heard that I knew how to cook, but he didn't know for sure. And so during COVID, he was doing like a cooking series or whatever. And so we cooked together one day. He showed me how to make his like grandmother's adobe chicken and then some fish tacos. And we had so much fun during that video that he was like, oh, wait, like you actually know how to cook. And again, I'm not great, but I just, I know my way around the kitchen. And so I think that led to conversations about opening a restaurant together. And then when the restaurant was opened, like, I think he respected, and I know he did, what I thought about the menu and like the different items. And so it was very tough for me to have open conversations, critical, like constructive criticism conversations, but it's not that constructive. It's a little more critical than I'm used to being. And I don't like telling people things they don't want to hear. It's something that I've worked on. So I think it led to that respect and me being able to offer suggestions instead of just criticizing something and just being like, I don't like this. Like I was actually able to help with the dishes. So I think it just gives me a foot into that arena. I still am smart enough to know that I don't know what I'm doing entirely with that stuff. And so he gets to lead the way, but I feel like I'm a good supportive, supplemental partner that brings more to the table than just, whatever it is we bring to the table.
Well, you have genuine interest, which, is I think more than half the battle right there. Just the fact that you care about it.
Right.
And you care that the food is good and that the hospitality is good. And that makes a difference.
Yeah, I grew up in not grew up, but when I was 15, I started to work in restaurants. And I think that was I think when you hang out with someone or spend enough time with them, you can almost tell if they worked in restaurants or not. I think there's some definitive just ways they, behave and carry themselves with certain things. And I think I'm really appreciative that I spent as much time as I did in restaurants. And I worked in the Sodell restaurant group down in Delaware, and bartended and served tables. And it, it gave me a lot of goals of where I wanted to get in life. And so that I could enjoy, restaurant experiences like I used to be able to serve to other people, I guess. And so I think my time in restaurants helped with the restaurants we have now too.
Yeah. Well, it teaches you a lot about working with a team, working under pressure, serving people, dealing with all kinds of different personalities,
Yeah. I miss it sometimes, but everyone tells me I'm like, I would go back and bartend. And they're like, Craig, you'd do it for 2 nights and then you'd be done with it. And I was like, yeah, but I loved, just the social, aspect of it and the speed. And I definitely had fun doing it.
So, Craig, I want to talk about another passion of yours, and that's sewing. So you have a business called Sewing Down South. How did you get into this? How did you get into sewing?
So the same class that taught me how to cook also taught me how to sew. And so we were fortunate to still have home ec when I was in school. I went to public school in Delaware, and no matter what sport you played, no matter what your hobbies were, everyone took home ec and everyone took tech ed. And I didn't revisit sewing, after high school for years. And throughout college, I don't know, growing up, I was bullied pretty bad and I never really understood it. So I spent a lot of my time trying to understand it. And I think I eventually got to the point where a lot of the things that were done to me were just because these kids were experiencing it at home. And so there was kind of an empathy towards it where it was my perspective was good. It really wasn't fun to go through it, but I moved to Charleston from Delaware. That was a big reason. I didn't go to University of Delaware like everyone else from my high school. I was like, I need a fresh start.
Went to the College of Charleston.
Yeah, I went to College of Charleston, and I found this new confidence where I was like, you're kind of decide your own fate. There's no board of people that decide who's cool or who's fun or popular. You just decide that's you. And it allowed me to start doing things that I wanted to do, even if they seemed different or eccentric. And I feel like when you have, it comes off as confidence, I guess, when you do things that other people are too nervous to do because of stereotypes or whatnot. And so I always dressed a little, different or loud or but it wasn't loud. It was subtly done. I would change the buttons on my shirt to a different color or my shoelaces or something. And so when I just got to a point, I was studying for the bar exam, and I really wanted to start to fidget with my clothes a little more and add some pops of color. So I got an embroidery machine from Amazon. It was an embroidery machine and a sewing machine. And I kind of thought I was going to make clothes, but it's extremely hard, and I had never been taught how to make clothes. So I really just relied on the embroidering side of things. And it was cool, and I really enjoyed it. And there was something about the creation that was therapeutic to me during this time. And I was at the tail end of a relationship. And it was my mid-20s relationship, which I'm glad it happened because I get to talk to people about it now, when I go around and speak. But, you think you're going to get married, and it does something to your psyche when it doesn't work out because you're stuck in this habitual pattern, and you're like, but wait a minute, I was so close to this person and now it's just gone. And so I left my garden behind because I lived with this person, and I left my workshop behind, and all I had was this sewing machine. And the only thing I remembered how to make was a pillow from home ec. And so I just started to sew one night, and I was probably listening to like Eminem or Taylor Swift, and just like, and I was like, I was going through a breakup for the first time like that. And I just started to find this happiness through sewing. And so I started to watch YouTube videos on how to get better. And you can learn so much online now. I mean, I know that's a simplistic statement, but you really can. You can Google how to do anything and watch videos. And that's kind of how it started. And I got so much response from this post that I put on Instagram, which wasn't about the pillows. They were just kind of on the side with my sewing machine. But the response was like, please tell me you sewed them. Please tell me you sewed them. Like, how do we get a Craig pillow? And it just triggered something in me where I was like, this might just be different enough to work.
Wow. So that's it. It was like your followers almost told you, like, this, you need to be doing this, you know?
Yep. And I think it's a really neat relationship to have with your consumer. You know, I was very fortunate to have Bravo as a platform. But what we've been able to do with Sewing Down South is build our own family and platform of people. And we actually try to do as much as we can off of their feedback as possible. And my partner Amanda is really good at gathering that information. And, you know, I'm constantly doing face-to-faces with people at our stores. And, you know, we put a lot of their suggestions into practice because, you know, that's who it's ultimately for.
You know, you not only were you going through a breakup, but I mean, you were going through a breakup on TV.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I saw a clip of your girlfriend at the time yelling at you. You were in a fight. And she said, all you ever do is stay home and sew all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, was that kind of true? Did you have a moment where you were really getting into it and doing a lot of it? Or was that more just a TV moment?
No, I mean, I was. And I think it was so interesting to me because I really thought when I walked through the door with the sewing machine for the first time, everyone was going to be like, oh my God, that's so cool. And I couldn't have been more wrong. Like, I was met with such negativity from everyone in my life, you know, except my parents. I mean, at that point, they had a son that went to law school and then reality TV, and now he's buying a sewing machine. They were just happy I was, you know, alive and healthy. But I was baffled by it. And it became such an introspective kind of time in my life where I this is a great thing. It wasn't fun to be filmed at the time, but it's a great thing to tell people now. There wasn't a single person in my life that thought it was a good idea. You know, not a single person thought Sewing Down South was a good idea. And like, you know, no matter if your inner circle can see it or not, like if you believe in it, just, you know, please don't not attempt, you know, whatever it is that you think you have there. And so I started to sew. And it became, you know, I guess lonely, which again, when you talk to people that started businesses, there is a period where it gets lonely because you start to put all of your time and effort into that. Now, I think that statement came from, I think my girlfriend at the time was worried about what people were going to think. You know, I feel comfortable that I'm not putting words, you know, in her mouth, and it was a long time ago, but I think that I overestimated the self-validating that I had to do when I left, like in high school, like the bullying that I went through as a kid, where I had to tell myself that I was good enough. I didn't realize that a lot of people didn't go through that. You know, there was things that I learned from that like detrimental experience that actually became positives later in life. And so you had some people on our show that had never dealt with adversity, I guess, from like bullies before, like online, you know, then it became online stuff. And so I think she was really worried about the fact that I was going to be known as this kid that like just sewed. And that's okay. Like everyone's different, but that never even crossed my mind. I knew that, being confident enough to do something that, not everyone was comfortable doing was great. And so the message became really positive, but it wasn't until, I was studying for the bar at that time too. And so it was really just studying and sewing. And I lost myself in it though. I had so much fun doing it. And something was telling me to keep going. And it was probably a lot of the support from the outside world too.
Yeah.
So that really gave the whole story its seeds though. If I would have started this business and it became an overnight success, I don't know if it would have the impact that it does now. But people got to watch everyone in my life really try to stop this from happening.
Is it still sort of a retreat for you, or something that you even have time to do? I mean, you're spending so much time in front of a camera, dealing with social media, running a business. Do you actually get to take a little bit of time every now and then and just do that thing that doesn't involve a screen?
Right. I recently have made it a priority. The business got really busy last year, it's been great and it's fun. But I was asked that question by someone that had come in the store, and I realized that I had never even made my girlfriend anything. Paige, the new girlfriend, my girlfriend now. But I was like, wow, Craig, you went from sewing every day to, eventually, as businesses size, they, you're not doing, a lot of the things that you used to do. And so I've made it a priority to start again. And I think one of my favorite things to do is the gifting aspect of sewing. With Amazon and the internet, you really can buy someone anything. And I feel like recently, not that it ever lost its charm, but recently handmade gifts go so far and it's so unique and it's really fun to make stuff for people. So that's something that I've had to write down and make a goal, which is crazy because, like you said, I used to, that's what I used to do. That was my escape. So I think recently I've gone back to it.
That's great. What a great thing to focus on, especially just in the chaos of everything else. And the holidays are here, so it's also another reason to do it.
It's good because I feel like we're missing out on some hobbies these days, and like making stuff with your hands. With video games and the internet, like there's nothing wrong with those things, but there is a massively therapeutic nature to creating stuff with your hands. And I think people were trying to break down the barriers of that. Some people think like, oh, if I don't have my grandmother's sewing machine, I can't get into crafting. And it's not, yes, there are some, a few barriers to entry, but I think everyone, and then we meet so many people that are like, oh, my grandmother taught me to sew, and, kids bring me stuff to the store that they made. And so hopefully we can have a hand in stepping back into that a little bit.
Well, Craig, kind of an extension of your interest in sewing, I wanted to ask about your house reno. I know you've been kind of working on your own home. Is there a room in particular that you're most excited about, or that you've really, where you've really enjoyed the process the most?
Yeah, designing my kitchen was something that I had looked forward to since I was a kid. You put yourself in my parents' kitchen, which was fine, but everything, you start to get bothered by the placement of stuff or the drawers, and you start to fantasize about designing your own kitchen and be like, if I did this, I would have this there and this there and this there. And so I did have a water damage at my house, and the house was built in 1970. And so then we ran into an asbestos issue, and I really had to make a decision. I was either going to do a total overhaul or move. My neighbors are so incredible. And I started to hear horror stories from my friends of moving into a house and having like neighbors that weren't nice, which I had never even thought of. That I was like, I'm you don't get to pick your neighbors, and these guys, these families are great. So I decided to do the whole thing. And I almost forgot about this dream of designing my kitchen because I had Thomasville cabinets were great. They came in and they were like, okay, here's the kitchen we designed for you. And I had to take a moment to step back and be like, wait a minute, I actually have been thinking about this since I was a kid. And so I got to design the kitchen, which was, and make it as functional as possible, which was really cool. But once you start, you can't really stop. You tell yourself, this is the last project. This is the last project. We just did the front yard with, I took a picture for y'all. I had hundreds of Southern Living pots in my front yard when I pulled up the other night, all these potted plants. And
that's a great thing. There might be a story here, Craig. We gotta talk about that.
Yeah. So we, now the last room that I'm doing is I'm currently sitting in the bonus room above the garage, and I used it for a podcast studio and kind of technology room for a while, but I'm now turning this into a crafting room to help with getting back into sewing and stuff.
That's great. That's great. Now you have a place to go and a retreat for that. Yeah, no excuses.
No more excuses not to.
All right, so Craig, I want to do something real quick. So we do a little rapid fire kind of Q&A thing. Are you game for that?
Yeah, let's do it.
Biscuits or cornbread?
Oh, cornbread. I do love biscuits, but cornbread.
Sweet or unsweet?
Unsweet.
I think I know the answer to this one. Sewing or gardening?
Oh, man. That's really, it's really tough. Obviously, my whole life is around sewing. But I have grow shelves in my garage. I start all my vegetables from seed. I love gardening. I don't know. I wish this was a drinking game where I could drink instead of answering. But if I had to, I don't know. I might be surprising you and going with gardening if I could only do one forever, just because I could feed my family with it.
Okay, that's fair.
I guess we wouldn't have any clothes, but at least we'd have fresh veggies.
You'd have some tomatoes.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. The best barbecue place in Charleston is blank.
I love Home Team. I haven't done enough of my research. You guys had all the greats out there at the Southern Living tailgate, Rodney Scott's, and I mean, they're all so good, but we just had Home Team do my brother got married on a Friday last week, and so we hosted the Saturday pool party, and we had Home Team cater it, and it's just always a hit. So I'm going to go with Home Team.
It's a good one. No argument there. The best bar in Charleston is blank.
Soon to be, by the way. But I'll give it to, so like I really love going to Share House and Uptown. But Dispensary's awesome. They're great. I've spent a lot of time there. And then my college bar was the Silver Dollar, but that's just where I spent college at. But yeah, I think a rotation of, but see, then my favorite is Reds too, low key on Shem Creek. Reds is awesome. Yeah. So I used to spend a lot of time at the bars. So that's a hard one to pick.
All right, last one. The most Southern thing about me is blank.
The most Southern thing about me, I would love for Paige to answer this question. I think my love for country music. Yeah, I think I bounce. I'm very like mid-Atlantic. I bounce around with different stuff, my style, and I don't think I have an accent. So I think the country music and the cooking style now, probably.
All right, great. So I've just got a few more. I want to ask you about Southern Charm. You have been doing Southern Charm for 10 years now, which is kind of amazing. And you know, there've been some pretty heated arguments and fights and that sort of thing on Southern Charm, which is, of course, part of what makes it entertaining. But I'm curious, what does the dynamic look like when the cameras aren't rolling?
It's a great question because I started to film when I was 24. I'm 36 now. And fortunately, we've captured us. Like I was going through my 20s. I was making a lot of mistakes and doing silly things. But I've learned that a lot of people did that too. Like a lot of us go through similar things. Like our traumas might be different. Like I do some work with the veterans or Paralympic. Like everyone has their own thing, but a lot of the feelings and the human emotions like the same. And so you capture us on Southern Charm really trying to work through these issues that we're forced to confront. A lot of the
In front of a
personality,
camera. Yeah.
yeah, in front of a camera, and a lot of the personalities probably would run away at times. But, Charleston's such a small town that you cannot avoid running into someone. Like you just can't. And even if you're not filming, you're gonna run into whoever you have an issue with in this town. And as I started to get into, grow into my own in the business side of things, like you can't have unsettled problems with people around town. Like it's just not like you really have to grow up and handle things maturely. But not everyone's on the same page. And my friend Sierra from Summer House told me a couple years ago, she was like, Craig, your message is usually correct, but it gets lost in your delivery. Like a lot of times I was drinking a lot on the shows because I was, it made it easier to talk about things that you didn't necessarily want to talk about. And the problem is I would lose the delivery, basically lost my message. And so I've worked on that a lot. And, when we're done filming, a lot of times we take a break, or we used to take a break from each other, but the boys don't. Like Shep goes and travels a lot. I think he's dealing with, is Charleston the right place for him to be all the time as a single person? Because your options are in his world are a little limited. Like he knows how to go out and meet people at the bar, and I don't know if that works for him here anymore. And so he travels a little bit. Austin and I have twisted the knife into each other of being like, or the hook, the fishing hook of being like, let's do more and more businesses together so that we are forced to, or that we can escape each other. But that's been a fun study into, work ethic and personality and working with friends. Cause all of my businesses are with friends. So if it falls apart, it's going to be tough. But yeah, I would say that our show has lasted 10 seasons. The 10th season's about to come out in December, I think, somewhere around there. Our show has lasted because it's authentic and organic. Like they did a really good job of just showing up and filming the craziness that's here. Sometimes they have to guide you to talk about the things that you don't want to talk about. But that's their job. And
but it's real. It's real what you're seeing, and
yeah,
the emotions are real anyway. Yeah.
Yeah. It has to be structured a little bit because if you're fighting, off camera, and that's what, has been like, if the big blow up's off camera, like that's not fair to anyone. That's not fair to the show or the viewers or anyone. And so they try to keep it structured so that our interactions are able to be shared with everyone else. It's funny to be in this world though. You learn, certain friends have certain things that maybe like they'll get caught like trying to text on the side or take care of something on the side. And but that's a good way to let go. Like I don't think you really have the longevity in reality TV if you're not all in. And for better or for worse, we're still here.
You're still in it. Well, and you've got season 10 that's about to roll out. Is there anything about this season that felt really different to you?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm in a new place in my life. I changed my relationship with alcohol about a year and a half ago or 2 years ago, where I started to really cut back because everything that I did was kind of like a social event. And so I didn't know any better. There wasn't my dad told me, he said, there's nothing bad happening, Craig, but is there anything good happening either? Like I was kind of stuck in this flat line, pattern. Everything businesses was profitable. But anyway, so I just decided to try something new. And all of a sudden I was waking up in the mornings with like a fresh head, and businesses started to do better, and I could quantify not drinking as much. And once I started to make more money by getting healthier and working out in the morning, that was a no-brainer. And I was very fortunate to make that change. The issue is that goes kind of against
Is that good TV?
right. That goes against, the Craig that a lot of people knew on the show. Now,
Yeah.
I'm confident that people who have known me since I was 24 through TV and my book or whatever stuff, like they're going to be very happy to see the changes in my life. However, I think it's challenging on the people in my life where like, going to the bar or going out, was a big part of our relationship. Change isn't always easy. And so I think that I think I'm just going to be, like, I'm in a new place in my life. I'm growing up, I want to like settle down and have a family and stuff. And I think that's the first time that's really going to have to be addressed. It might sound easy or silly, but it's not. And then you have Shep, who I think is the MVP on just being himself. I think we get to see a side of Shep that the viewer has never seen before. And it allows him and I to connect at a new level. And I think it might not be what everyone thinks it's about. I think they'll be surprised to find out what it's about. And I applaud him for being as open and honest as he is this season. So I think, somehow our 10th season is going to be something that viewers have not seen before. I don't think anyone's going to be let down. I think it's going to be really exciting, when the trailer drops sometime soon.
Well, it's a great preview. Without giving away too much, thank you for that and for sharing
I'm probably
that.
going to shoot myself in the foot and be like, I'm saying like, I can't wait for it to come out. And then it's going to come out and be like, how, Craig? No, I'm just kidding.
How did they edit it that way? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I will tell, fortunately, I feel like our show does a good job of, it's all contextual. What context is presented is very important. And I applaud Southern Charm for giving, I think, great context for a lot of stuff. So you better not mess it up, guys and girls up in New York. But I think it's going to be a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of excitement around it. Austin and I had some, business stuff going on, and I don't know. It's going to be a good one.
I'm sure it is. Speaking of New York, I've got to ask you one question about Paige, your girlfriend, who you really introduced to Charleston, if I'm not mistaken. So tell me about her just first visit to the city and how her perception has changed over the last couple of years. She's made a bunch of trips now. What's her take on Charleston?
Yeah, I mean, to her credit, I think she had been here like once or twice in her past life, at some point. But it's really a neat, I don't know if we've found the balance yet, but it's really neat sharing time between New York City and Charleston, because it's the North and the South. It's the speed of New York with this complete relaxation of Charleston. You have everyone talks to everyone in Charleston. Like in New York, it's actually considered polite to not talk to people, is what they'll convince you. Everyone has somewhere to be. It's considerate to not slow them down by talking. The fashion is intertwined. Fortunately, Charleston's an incredible food city. So I think it's fun to watch her try to figure it out. Because they are different. And I think if we can figure out how to have a little piece of each, like that's the dream scenario, because they're two great places. I always fantasized about having a life in New York at an early, when I was in law school and stuff. But life just never took me there. You know, for Paige, I think Charleston symbolizes slowing down. And I think she's just in this place where her career's taking off and she's so busy. Like, yes, there are plenty of extremely successful people here and awesome careers and all that stuff. Paige just happens to be in an industry that's not well represented down here yet. Like, we just don't have the same fashion world that New York has yet. You know, it's coming, but you know, so right now we use it as recharging. You know, when she's here, fortunately, maybe you guys will come take some pictures of it one day, but we've got this awesome backyard with a huge pool, and we've got our bees back there. We have beehives and an outdoor kitchen and a garden and a putting green. And so when she's here, she really uses it to recharge and take in like it's a very relaxing life, or it can be a relaxing life here. And then when we're in New York, it's really like hustle and bustle.
It's go, go, go. Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know. I think it's evolving, but it's still very like those differences are still there. You know, we've been together for 3 years now, so I think we try really hard to live in the present and not let the unknown of the future, which is very unknown, ruin the happiness of today. But that's, you know, you also can't live in denial. You also have to recognize that you can't do this forever, you know?
Yeah, right.
And so I hope that we show a lot of that this year, because there's more long distance relationships than people think. And they all reach out to us, and well, not all of them, but I like meeting people that can connect through that. And they're like, it's really funny to watch you guys on TV because we're going through like the same thing. I think she probably has a very similar perspective as a lot of people that move down. The difference is during COVID and stuff, a lot of New Yorkers that came to Charleston had lived their careers out in New York already and maybe started a family. And, you know, all of a sudden they're in Charleston and there's a backyard and it is the slower pace. And all of a sudden your dollar goes a little further. I think it just depends on where you are in life for what Charleston means to you. And that's just, you know, that's what we'll figure out one day.
Until then, I hope you keep enjoying it, and hope you stick around in Charleston for a long time. I just have one more question for you, Craig. What does it mean to you to be Southern?
I really like the manners, how I was raised, you know, and I know that people are raised to have manners all over the country, but I think there has been this level of decorum that is entrapped in cities like Charleston. I travel a lot. You know, I fly 3 times a week for work now, which is I'm blessed to do, but it gives me insight into the rest of the country. And there's some places that general decorum is just doesn't exist anymore. You know, it's on the downslope. And I do like that it's still valued here. And so to be Southern to me is to go back in the past a little bit of being like, you know, home cooked meals, you know, a sense of community. You know, if stuff hits the fan tomorrow, I hope to think that like everyone has some neighbors that they could count on, but you know, that doesn't exist in a lot of places now. So I know that's not saying that other places don't have it, but that's what I really like about being down here is kind of that gentleness, and you know, respect for others. Now, the counter of like a northerner would say, hey, yeah, you guys all say that on the face and then you talk behind each other's backs. But hey, you're still polite to each other's, you know, face. You still hold the door for each other. And, but yeah, that's at least my personal attachment to it.
Well, and then you see something like what's happened in North Carolina, and you see the way that community springs to action, and you know what that is really about, and people show up and they're pitching in and they're helping each other, and they are, you know, bringing out their chainsaws and their shovels, and they're delivering food, and they're, you know, doing everything that they can to help each other get through it. And, that's the really positive side
And
of it.
it's well, there's nothing neat about it, but it is neat to see how different areas handle stuff like that. And you're right. Like it really stinks that it happened all together, but there is this like level of fortunateness that the communities have each other, I guess. Like not that it happened, but like where it happened, you're right. Like everyone banded together to help each other, which was really nice to see. And I'm going up there in a couple weeks because I've talked to some people and they're really worried that as the news cycle shifts, they're going to be forgotten about. And their entire infrastructure was washed away. So it's a long recovery process, and you hope that they're at least able to stay, in the area. But it's going to be tough. But yeah, that level of community was a silver lining that came out of that.
Well, for anyone who makes it to the end of this podcast in December when it comes out, I hope this is a good reminder that they're going to continue to need help up there.
That's right.
Well, Craig Conover, thanks so much for being on Biscuits and Jam.
Thanks for having me, Sid. It was a pleasure.